Yeah. All right, let's go. Let's switch over to what happened yesterday. And there were so many different things. Can you give me a little bit of an overview, Russ? And Russ Latino is my guest, president in Power, Mississippi. A little overview of what died yesterday officially.
Well, an awful lot of stuff died yesterday.
Yeah, I mean the big stuff. I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, every year around this time, what you see is, a lot of bills falling by the wayside. I would say this year has been more aggressive than in years past. I think a lot of that has to do probably with conversations around some of the bigger ticket priority items, like the elimination of the income tax or what we do with tax policy. I think in terms of what died yesterday, there was an awful lot of stuff that basically didn't make it into committee yesterday. So most of the stuff that made it into committee passed out of committee yesterday. There were exceptions. There was a home-based business bill that we were supportive of and thought could have continued on and been improved upon that died yesterday, House Bill 917, that essentially was trying to recognize the fact that our economy is changing, that a lot of people are working from home, and that we've got sort of a patchwork of regulations and rules across the state when it comes to whether or not you can operate a home-based business, what are the circumstances that you can operate one in. And we wanted to get some more clarity there to make sure that we're not precluding people who want to start entrepreneurial businesses. That's one thing that we were working on that didn't make it out yesterday. There were other things along in the process that we were extremely supportive of that didn't make it out. I think you had talked on air about the idea of the Mississippi Transfer Act in education, which is the idea that a child should not be held hostage if there's a public school that wants to accept that child and they want to go to that different public school, that the sending school or the current school shouldn't literally be able to keep a child hostage. That's not the way most of these transfer laws work in other states. Mississippi's got a pretty unique law in that they allow for that. That was one that we thought was just a common sense reform. Another one, Paul, that we thought was a common sense reform was really around the idea of using technology in education, particularly in the classroom where you've got people who aren't certified teachers. The state of Mississippi made a $260 million investment in technology with laptops and iPads and all sorts of things last year. And we don't want that to be a sunk cost, right? We want to be able to make sure, one, that kids are getting the instruction that they need, including supplemental instruction in the classroom, and two, that we're making use of the technology to its fullest extent. So those are things that we worked on that unfortunately didn't make it. I think the more sort of interesting thing, at least from my vantage point, is what did make it out. And there are three that I would highlight. I mean, I think the teacher pay is one. Certainly there was a lot of controversy yesterday leading up to whether or not that teacher pay raise bill would pass. There were two teacher pay raise bills, one that originated in the Senate Bill 2444, and then one that originated in the House Bill 530. House Education did not meet yesterday, so they didn't take up the Senate bill, which effectively forced the hand of the Senate to have a second education meeting and take up the Senate bill at the end of the day, and there were some fireworks around that.
Well, wait a minute, wait.
You want to talk about the fireworks?
You're going too fast because I don't want to miss the fireworks here. The House said, take it or leave it. We're gone. We're adjourned. Left the Senate saying, well, we got to do something here. This is not going to be good. So the clock was ticking, and they finally did that. But did they do a strike all on this one also?
They did. So essentially,
now, for people who don't understand this, and I don't like the strike all method to avert a deadline, but explain that to the people.
Yeah, so essentially what that means is it gets in committee. There are code sections open in the existing legislation that allow that legislation to be amended. And a strike all is literally an amendment that says we're going to delete everything that is in the current bill and do what is called a committee substitute. So what happened is that there were mild variations between the House plan and the Senate plan, in my estimation. The Senate plan had more gradual increases over time. The House plan had more upfront money in terms of teacher pay raise. But it kind of worked out to about the same dollar figure in the end. But what the Senate did was they took the House bill, they struck all of the language that was in the House bill, and they inserted the language that they had in the Senate bill for pay raise. So now House Bill 530 essentially includes the language that was in the Senate bill. One addition was that they included a $1,000 pay raise for teacher assistants. in the bill that wasn't in the original Senate bill.
Do we know the overall cost of that? Did they put that in there?
Yeah, I don't know the cost of the $1,000 raise for the teacher assistants. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a super big number. I think the total,
not commensurate with the regular teachers, but still,
sure,
it's going to add on to that. What was it? 290 million?
I think it's 219, 220 million, somewhere up in there. There have been estimates that have ranged from 219 to 250 million. Some of that has to do with questions around things like state pensions and benefits that have to be calculated into that as well.
Yeah, we'll
so
talk
it's not
more.
Just salary.
I was a little disappointed to find out that the Senate pulled Becky Curry's amendment, which passed unanimously in the House, which means the people who defrauded us and caused a great deal of angst in our healthcare system in the state were rewarded with, at least according to the Senate, another contract. It's alive and well, as the Senate at the last moment pulled the contract, or the amendment from Becky Curry that says we'd have to have a home base somewhere in the state of Mississippi to administer those funds. We'll talk about that, and also the Wildlife Fund and personal income tax coming up next. Live from the Trustmark Studios, a home loan from Trustmark fits you to a T. Trustmark, people you trust, advice that works. Member FDIC and an equal housing lender. Personal income tax, you're on.
Well, there are two competing plans.
Yeah.
One that eliminates the income tax that originated in the House. We believe that is a better piece of legislation than the piece of legislation they had last year, that it provides immediate benefits to Mississippi taxpayers, particularly in a high inflation environment like the one that we're in. If you make $40,000 a year, you wouldn't pay any income taxes next year. If you make $80,000 a year as a couple, you wouldn't pay any income taxes next year. And then the rest of the income tax over time would be phased out based on revenue growth. And then the Senate plan, which is obviously smaller in terms of the tax cut portion, that essentially eliminates the 4% bracket on the first $5,000 of income. That's a $200 net tax cut once it's phased in over 4 years.
When's the deadline on this one?
March 15th is the deadline for them to act on each other's stuff. I would say, look, and you know that I've put out some stuff suggesting that there's a Goldilocks moment here where it's possible that the House's assessment of the Senate plan that it's too small is accurate, and the Senate looks at the House's plan and they think the plan is too big or too risky, and you look at it and sort of say one might be too hot and one might be too cold, but is there a just right somewhere in the middle?
But you got to get together to do that.
No, I agree. They've got to be willing to talk, right? And Republicans have to be willing to coalesce around big ideas. I think part of the issue is, do people in the Senate actually want to eliminate the income tax? Mm-hmm. Because if you want to eliminate the income tax, you can address the mechanics, right? You can figure out how to fix what you see as being wrong with the current proposal that came out of the House. If you don't think that it's a goal that we should eliminate the income tax, that's a completely different story. But we should be open and honest about what the objective is. And I think if the objective is eliminate the income tax and we don't want offsets or we want to do it slower or we want the cut to be smaller on the front end, all of those things are workable. But it requires that we agree on the goal. And that's what's not clear to me. I mean, look, the deadline is March 15th, Paul, but I would look at the deadline as being the end of the year, because the governor has made it very clear that he believes that this is the right goal. Yeah. The governor has a lot of tools at his disposal, not the least of which is the ability to call special sessions.
It's not going to help the political futures of anybody in the House and Senate to have the governor have to call a special session. And in the world of politics, that does matter to some people. Secondly, there's a lot of people who are frustrated, Russ, because we have Republicans on both sides, and they are not working together on this. I don't want them to be in kumbaya with everything, but I mean the relationship between the two are so much like Republican and Democrats. It's hard to figure out who's who, and it doesn't play well in anything but the party primary. And I think you'll see that in the party primary.
Yeah, I mean, look, I share your frustration in the sense that we can't agree on big goals. I mean, it seems like on this one there's an agreement between the governor and the speaker, at least, that with back-to-back billion-dollar surpluses, with projected $4.4 billion in reserve next year, and candidly, that's conservative because it's based off of revenue estimates that have been wildly inaccurate for multiple years running. So it's going to be more than $4.4 billion sitting on the sideline. Yeah. That's the people's money. And if you're conservative and you're Republican and you believe that people spend money better than government and the people who earn the money have a moral right to spend that money on their families and their businesses and in their communities, then it really should be a question of how and not if.
Yeah. I think every session will have people like Hob Bryan and David Blood and the Black Caucus and some of the members of the Democrat Party come up and say, what can we do for people who are not working? You know, and we don't have anything for people who are working. And we have the largest percentage of people not working in workforce participation in the state of Mississippi as any other state. Do something for the taxpayers. I don't want one other point here, and I was just thinking about this. The teacher pay raise bill and the personal income tax bill do have some commonality in where the Senate says, we want to give you something, but we'll give you a little, we'll make it up, and it's going to take a while. And basically that's what the House bill versus the Senate bill, which underwent a strike all by the Senate, is saying basically the same thing. We're going to give it to you, but we're just not going to give it to you in like the House was. You're going to have to wait. And that's not going to do anything to bring us up to a national average or even a southeastern average faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is room for compromise here, though, Paul. I really do. I mean, when I look at the questions around the income tax, and you raised Hob Bryan and David Blunt, they obviously have a very different philosophical point of view. They should not be the philosophical point of view that controls a supermajority Mississippi Senate with a supermajority Republican Mississippi Senate. So I do think that there are people in the Senate who are taking seriously the idea of can we eliminate the income tax or not. You know, I one of the texts on your text thread over here asked about whether or not I'm concerned about federal money creating these revenue surpluses. There's no doubt that federal spending had an impact on where we are financially in terms of tax revenue, but it's important to understand that what we're talking about in the $7 billion of revenue that we'll collect this year for general fund spending is that none of that is like the federal ARPA money, right? That's in a separate pot. These are tax dollars collected from Mississippi taxpayers that have contributed to this amount. So while it may come down slightly, we're not talking about going from $7 billion in revenue to going to $6 billion in revenue.
Well, and another thing on this, too, we've had some Republicans on the air with me from the Senate side not seeing that. They were saying this is all based on one-time money, and that was not true.
Yeah, that's just a false narrative.
It is a false narrative. Plus the fact, the economic indicators, if you take a look at them for the last several years, say, yeah, you know, you guys do deserve some kind of a tax rate. Maybe we should stop worrying about growing government and start worrying about giving some of the money back, because every indicator, the lottery succeeded everybody's expectations. We thought we wouldn't get up to $80 million, and the people in education kept saying, hell, why do I want $80 million cap? I'll never get that. You'll never get to $80 million. They got money the first year, getting another bundle this year.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Adam Ganeshow at Mississippi Today a couple of weeks ago had a tweet that said something along the lines of, you know, this is what I told you years ago around the Taxpayer Pay Raise Act in 2016. Essentially, it was the Kansas threat, right? If you pass the Taxpayer Pay Raise Act in 2016, we're going to end up being Kansas. And my response to him was, is this a mea culpa, or are you making a new prediction? Because the reality is, every time we talk about giving money back to the people who earned it, someone comes out and says the sky will fall, we won't be able to fund education, we won't be able to fund roads, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. And the fact is, we've made a lot of tax cuts in the state of Mississippi, and we haven't seen revenue fall. We've gone from a $4.7 billion budget 10 years ago to a $6 billion budget today, and we're operating with $7 billion in revenue.
Well, listen, I agree with everything you said, but you've wasted some breath. To even mention the word gonna chew and whatever it is just, and even quote the guy.
But I think he, to some degree, is saying what the people who are against tax relief are saying and believing.
Well,
right?
they'll never change their mind.
A narrative.
Yeah. The governor basically said, sent out a tweet yesterday, said state revenues exceeded estimates by 97.2 million, 31.49% over the estimate in 1 month. Legislature can spend that money on growing government, or they can let you keep your money. My vote is eliminate the income tax, so you know where the governor falls on this one. There was, what am I missing here? I don't. Though the Wildlife Trust Fund, I spoke to my source in between breaks here, and there was a strike all on the Wildlife Fund. I'm not sure if you know that.
That one's beyond me, Paul.
All right, I'll give you the update on what happened with the Wildlife Fund from a reliable source coming up in just a moment or two in the final segment. Russ, you want to hang on for one more?
Yeah, I can.
Let's do that. Final segment of this hour coming up next. The initiative process continues. It leaves on. I don't know if we mentioned that, or did we? We did talk about the initiative process. It lives on. But there was a couple of other things here that I did want to mention. The Wildlife Fund, while we have a chance. And my understanding is that it is alive. It was not killed. The House, the Senate did a strike all. They basically, in this one, from my understanding here, I have not read the bill, and I didn't write down everything that my contact said this morning, but I think I have it right on this one. It would allow public only in the first year. So just to try to meet that objective that was from the House and Senate. And the second year would include the public and private as far as possible getting grants. And it also has appropriations instead of diversions, but there is some promise to make the appropriations instead of going through the diversion route. So that's what I heard, and we'll give you more follow-up as I get off. I'll do some studying on that one and take a look at the bill. What else did we want to mention here? The anything else that you had that you wanted to mention?
I don't think that we actually talked about the initiative process, but I do think that
I don't think we did.
That one is an important one, obviously, to a lot of people. I mean, it's changed, right? And you may have talked about this in previous shows. It's not a constitutional amendment through ballot measure. Right. It's a statutory amendment. It sort of limits the type of initiatives that can be driven, and I think this is actually smart, so that it doesn't require, it doesn't allow essentially for initiatives that would appropriate money above and beyond what can be spent, right, or what's available. And then the other thing that it does is it limits the ability of the legislature to amend or repeal the initiatives if they pass, which is important because you don't want to spend a bunch of money getting an initiative passed and then the next session have somebody repeal it. But it does provide an avenue for amendment with a supermajority. So let's say an initiative passes because people don't understand what's in it. And the end result is that it's really negative for the people of Mississippi. With a supermajority threshold, they can come back and make an amendment.
There was some doubt on this one because some of the words that the chairman, Accountability Committee Chairman John Polk, were saying, it sounded like he was not going to let out a committee, but apparently he did, and his statement on that was his final statement on the matter. I think they, meaning the House leaders, have a good bill that we'll be able to build on together, and that is what we're doing. So that was the statement of John Polk.
Well, see, that's evidence that they can get along.
That's exactly what I thought. I mean, if you could find that common ground from everybody, it would be good. The Mississippi legislature can come together and pass a law for dope, but they can't pass a law to do away with the income tax. So you Spire text line. Have you been reading some of these?
I have been reading them. They're interesting.
The comments are just unbelievable on some of these things. But I'm telling you, and this has been the rule. They haven't fared well. The Democrats, the Republicans in the Senate have not fared well with the people across the state. It seems that this is Mike in Gulfport. Seems the Senate can control the entire state government. Delpert is screwing around with our future and has his minions in virtual lockstep. And there is a lot of people that comment on that one. So I think some political damage is being done, to be honest with you. So,
well, I think there's political damage being done, but I candidly think there's political damage being done to the Republican brand when we can't figure out how to work together.
I agree with you.
And so, to some degree, I would say the rhetoric needs to be tamped down. And look, rhetoric's coming from both sides. Yesterday, we saw that after the teacher pay raise. But the rhetoric needs to be tamped down so we can figure out what's possible. I do think the governor's going to end up playing a very large role on whether or not we can get to an income tax elimination package. Yep. I threw out an alternative idea around just going to a 4% flat tax, then putting a trigger.
And I think Philip Gunn said that had been considered.
Well, and look, I mean, it's the kind of thing that's smaller than what the House proposal is, no doubt. Yeah. At least on the outset. It's a little bit slower, but it provides us what would be a competitive rate compared to Louisiana. Louisiana just lowered theirs to 4.25. So we would be competitive and create an environment where you could gradually, get rid of the rest of the income tax. I'm not saying that's the be-all, end-all, but there's more than one way to skin the cat, I guess is my point.
Have you been following this one? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback on Senate Bill number 2716. It's an act to ratify interstate compact between the states of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. It's several counties in Arkansas that are adjacent to the river. It's kind of in that delta area. It's almost like the Delta Development District that we used to have in that area. And I knew nothing about this, but there are some people upset with this one because it puts a lot of power. Have you been, and I'm not sure if it's alive.
Yeah, just slightly. I mean, my understanding is that the bill essentially creates a form of eminent domain, or could be read to create a form of eminent domain that would allow land to be taken and given to private developers, which is something
out of the legislature's purview, too, isn't it?
I mean, it's arguably within the legislature's purview. It's not a good idea.
Well, a region smart development shall have the power to prescribe the details of such notes, bonds, et cetera, et cetera. The power of this people, and it's only for, as far as Mississippi's concerned, it's only for the county, DeSoto County. That's it. But if you folks haven't been covering this, you need to take a look at this. And I'm not sure if it's dead or not. We'll find out when I get off. Senate Bill numbers SB 2716. Take a look at that. It's a powerful bill. So, Russ, as always, sir, appreciate it. Time flies fast when you're having fun.
Enjoyed it.
You got it. Roger.